Eurovision 2026 has been and gone. What were the big headlines? Who are the big winners? And what do we think of the whole thing? This video is my Eurovision 2026 in review. Hi there and welcome to ESC Canuck. My name is Scott. I am a Eurovision superfan, a television professional, and a comedian, and I just love everything Eurovision. And unfortunately, the last couple of weeks have been some of the busiest in my personal history, and so while I did watch Eurovision and the semi-finals, I haven't been able to make any content about it until this video. Alright, let's start with the most important thing, and that's the big headlines from Eurovision 2026. First up, we have a new winner. Check the lighting. It's not Italy, but it is Bulgaria, and Dara with the song Bangaranga. But before we talk more about the winner, let's talk about some other headlines. I think two of the biggest things that stood out about Eurovision 2026 this year is the stage and the vocals. This stage is incredibly unique. I think it's one of those ones just like 2014 where as soon as you see the layout you're gonna know exactly what year you were watching. It's incredibly visually memorable, and I really enjoyed all the different ways the different delegations use the stage in order to showcase their songs. And I think Dara did it particularly well. But before we get to that, the other headline is just how exposed the vocal was. Super quick, when someone sings into a mic, you don't sort of take that and immediately put it into the output. It goes through a series of audio effects that adjust and manipulate the sound to make it sound better. It's called like a vocal chain, and there will be lots of effects that happen one after the other, a bit of reverb, a bit of compression, things that sort of take away some of the rough edges of the voice. This vocal that you're getting through the microphones is then mixed in with the backing track at a certain level, and certain, other techniques go on there to give you the final thing that you're hearing. And I think 2026, more so than other years, you could hear people's voices far more clearly, almost like they're sitting on top of the track than folded in with the mix. Got a little bit better, I would say, as in a little more blended for the grand final, but the semifinals were very, very exposed. What that means basically is that if you were a powerhouse singer, if there were no questions about the quality of your vocal, if your voice sounded strong and you can hit all your notes and you're confident and you don't need those effects to cover up weaker elements of a performance, then you did incredibly well this year. The other headline was the hosting. Now look, I'm not going to pretend that hosting Eurovision is easy. I don't think it's particularly difficult either, but there's something about just knowing 220 million people are watching you. You end up stressed, and when you're stressed, you're generally not doing your best work. It is to say that the hosting this year, I think, will be memorable for maybe not the reasons we hoped. But they gave it a red-hot try. I think the interval acts were also They were interval acts. I am an Australian and a Canadian, and unfortunately, I was really worried about the interval act in the first semi-final, Gojo performing a song about whether or not you could tell Australia and Austria apart. And I confess to texting a friend and asking, do you think this might hurt Delta Goodrem's chances in the grand final? Because it was not I statements. Let's use I statements. It was not as funny as I'd hoped it would be. It was not as musically interesting as I'd hoped it would be. And it was not executed as well as I hoped it'd be. But you know what? It's not, like, aggressively bad. Maybe you found it aggressively bad. Let's just say the highlights this year were definitely the performing artists, as kind of it should be. No one performing on the Eurovision stage wants to get upstaged by the interval act, even though there have been some pretty special ones in the last couple of years. Alright, those were the headlines as I see them. Now let's go into the semi-finals. Before we get to anything else, this is my favorite part. Let's look at the two semi-final prediction videos I made and talk about what I got wrong and why. For the first semi-final, these were the 9 countries, along with Israel, that I said would make the grand final. I did pretty good. I got 9 out of 10 here. Let's talk about the one that I said would qualify and didn't, which was Estonia. So I thought Estonia had a pretty good chance of making the grand final just because it was so accessible. It is a really familiar sound, it is very radio friendly. Vanilla Ninja have great name recognition in at least part of Europe, so it seemed like this was a song that, although not a lot of people liked, it wasn't very high in the odds, I still thought it had a really good chance of qualifying. It didn't, and instead we had Alicia qualify from Poland. That was the country that I didn't put in my final list that did qualify. And I think as soon as you saw the actual staging and the actual performance, yeah, I think I could have made that swap very, very easily. These predictions I made before we had even seen photos or rehearsal clips, so really just on the songs and how they were pre-performed, i.e. in their national finals or the studio release. And so that's why I made that call. Alicia's song just didn't really resonate with me on a songwriting level, but my goodness, when you get to that stage show, her use of the stage, her use of the dances, and most importantly, like I said, this year the vocals were really exposed, and you know who absolutely crushed the vocal? Alicia. She's an incredible singer, she's an incredible performer. Kudos to her, she definitely deserved to qualify for the grand final, and I'm very happy that she did. These are the 10 countries that I thought would qualify from semi-final number 2. And again, I predicted 9 out of the 10 correctly. Let's talk about what I had in there that didn't qualify, and that was Luxembourg. I actually think I preferred Luxembourg's national final performance to the grand final staging. Eva Maria is just so full of personality and charisma. She lit up that stage. She was playing with a space and an aesthetic that no one else really was, and by that I mean it's something that was really family friendly. This was a song that I think a lot of kids really liked, and although kids can't vote, if families are watching this together, if they're the ones voting, I thought she had a pretty good chance of making the grand final. She didn't make the grand final, and that's okay. Instead, the one that I didn't have in there that did qualify was Malta. That's really interesting considering just how well Malta did in the jury vote. I think it was a real jury song. It's a very classic ballad. It's a very beautiful song, and I think I just, because I have been following Eurovision songs for so long, sort of let it sink into the background, where clearly it would be a jury favorite. It's a good song, it's sung beautifully, and they had something inventive with the staging. I think the juries really enjoyed that, and it made the grand final, and very enjoyably so. Let's talk about the qualifications, and specifically I want to start talking about all the songs that didn't qualify for the grand final. Let's talk about Portugal. I think Rosa was a lovely song. I thought the staging was really beautiful. I think the thing that maybe made it fail to resonate is just the fact that there's something about the Eurovision environment. People are looking for things that are exciting, they're looking for the next big thing, and although this was very beautiful, it was very pastoral, it was very serene, and it was visually quite interesting as well, it was just incredibly slow stacked up against everything else. And I feel like, although there are people that really like that kind of music, couldn't find it anywhere else in the semi-final, they were just, unfortunately, they just didn't resonate. There just weren't enough people willing to back a slow song, even though this was considered, I think, the weaker of the 2 semifinals. Montenegro didn't qualify. That was a real shame. Tamara was incredible. I loved her styling. I thought the staging was really good. I thought the song was super interesting as well. I just think that maybe the storytelling of this entry wasn't as strong as it was in, say, the music video, where you sort of understood that it was about women breaking out of these traditional roles, forging their futures, carving up their destinies. That, I think, was a great story. I just don't think if you were watching the stage play, although you got some really cool moments, you got that part where they're all dancing in the line, staring out into nowhere, it was unfortunately just, I don't know what the song was about if I'd just seen that Eurovision performance. I hope Montenegro comes back. I hope they qualify next time. They're on a terribly long non-qualification streak. I think the competition is better for having them in it, and I hope we see more from Montenegro and from Tamara very soon. San Marino with Superstar also didn't qualify. I'm not gonna lie, I love Senate. She's just great. She's so much fun. This was such a party. It looked unlike anything else except maybe Czechia a little bit, but the mirrors were there, the fireworks. I thought her styling was really, really fun. I just don't think Boy George maybe added anything to that performance. I would follow Senate into battle. I'm not sure I'd do the same for Boy George, but you know what? It was a fun song. It was a great time. I think it lacked sort of the depth that maybe some of the other entries had that caused juries to bump it up their lists. And I'm not sure many people who are voting across Europe are in the pocket and still very excited about Boy George. I think if he'd shown up in a competition in the 90s, that might have swung a needle for whatever entry he was part of. But I think now it's a little bit The cultural relevance just isn't there. And finally we have Georgia on replay. I thought this was really fun. This just feels like maybe they didn't have the resources to really get it across the line. I thought their dancing was fun, their costumes were great, I loved the laser show, I liked the weird animated backgrounds. It is very memorable. I'm definitely gonna remember this entry for a long time. I can just sort of see why it didn't kind of ramp up throughout the song. It was good and fun at the beginning and it was good and fun at the end, but that's just not enough to get people to pick up the phone and vote for it. Going over to semi-final number 2, here I'm gonna go from the bottom up, and that is Azerbaijan and Jiva with Just Go. This was perhaps the most predicted thing that would happen this year in Eurovision, and it definitely came to pass. I thought she sang brilliantly. I liked she was singing in her native language and in English. I thought that worked really well. This seems like another victim of not having enough budget to really compete with the heavy hitters that we saw this year. That and the song being something that is very familiar that we've kind of heard before. I think she did a great job. I think she looked great. I'm not sure I understood why she was crying sort of sequined blood. That was a bit off-putting for the people that I showed this entry to, but nevertheless, I think she should be really proud of the performance that she gave in that semi-final. Next to Armenia and Simon with Paloma Rumba. God, this choreography was great. There was a moment in the performance where he goes to sort of barrel through like a wall of cardboard boxes, and the camera angles didn't quite catch it, and I'm not sure if that was like a technical error on the production team's part, or if the delegation hadn't selected the correct angles to really showcase that. So I just thought this was an entry where there was a little bit more room for improvement on the visual, how we were putting the cameras in places to tell this story. I'm not even sure that would have gotten across the line. This is just such an in-your-face, repetitive song, and also people who sing in English where it's not their first language are to be commended, but that second verse that Simon was performing, I couldn't catch a single word of what that was. I actually had to tell people who were watching it with me that it was in English, that the song was in English, because he is just so energetic and so on top of it and serving so much energy that the diction and the clarity became a bit lost, and I think that kind of held it back a little. It's up here when everyone else is down here, and being an outlier is good in some ways, but it can also mean that you're a little bit like, what was that, if you're one of the people fortunate enough to score the entries. Latvia also failed to qualify. I think Advara should be incredibly proud. She sang this song so beautifully. Her voice is incredible. Everything was really simple. It was really impactful. I know people who really, really loved this entry. For me, because it was almost identical to the national final, there wasn't anything new there that I really grabbed onto in order to like make it shoot up my list. But my God, how gorgeous, how beautiful, how lovely. I'm sorry she didn't make it. She was really, really good. Luxembourg I've also talked about already, so let's skip over to Veronica Fusaro with Alice. This is the song that I was really disappointed that didn't make the grand final. There's a couple of songs this year where I'm like, I really love this. I don't think other people are gonna love it as much as I do, and Alice was definitely one of those songs. She really threw everything at the wall with that staging. The giant red roped exhibit, the fact that she's playing her guitar, she's struggling against it, they're doing words with the ropes. I think it told the narrative of the story really well. Those dancers at the end all sort of hung up in the webbing. Definitely one where if I'm showing people the grand final, I'm like, you have to watch Switzerland as well. It was a shame. This was just a very strong semi-final. All right, we're reviewing every song that took part in Eurovision 2026 in this video. We're gonna start at the bottom and we're gonna rocket all the way up to the top. I'm gonna move quick because no one has forever to watch these kinds of videos. Let's start with the UK, coming 25th place. It's Look Mum No Computer with Eins, Zwei, Drei. I think this should have been higher. I understand why it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. The UK has never struggled to send things that are unique. Let me put it that way. They have often failed to send things that resonate with the Eurovision audience. And the UK will always send something that's very, very memorable, often for not the right reasons. I think Look Mum No Computer is memorable for the right reasons this year. I thought the staging was really fun. I loved the DIY aesthetic. Reminds me a little bit of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. I love how involved Look Mum No Computer was in actually like creating everything that you saw on stage. It had a very charming handmade feel, but there was no doubt you're getting a real British performance. And I think that, yeah, there was just too many standouts this year. To come 25th out of 25 is rough, but I think this was a great entry and I was very happy to watch it. In 24th place, we had Cosmo with Tanzschein. This, I think, was a little bit of a victim of its running order. It drew a last place, so it performed 25th out of 25 songs. That's a hard position to be in when you're not something super spectacular. And I don't think Austria needed to be super spectacular. They are the host nation. Their job is just to send something that is going to be fun, that is going to be charming, that is going to make everyone feel welcomed and included. And I think Tanzschein did a really good job of that. Cosmo should be very proud. He's one of the younger competitors this year. This was a fantastic experience. They did some clever stuff with the overhead camera looking down at the stage with the outlines. If you're gonna win Eurovision, you must be spectacular, you must be memorable, and most importantly, people who see your song, a whole big chunk of them have to want to rank it either 1, 2, or 3, and I think Tanzschein is good, Tanzschein is great. It's just in no one's top 3 songs, or maybe even in their top 10s this year. In 23rd spot, it's Sarah Engels with Fire. This was a real elevation. I did not find the national final performance to be particularly electrifying, but that performance on the actual Eurovision stage was really fun. That trust fall, that's a high trust fall. That was scary. I was worried looking at that. It was a real like wow moment. And you definitely need wow moments if you're going to win Eurovision. I can see why it slowed down. You know, again, not performing in the semifinal means that there's sort of less of a trial by fire to get your song into the final. And yet, again, here we've got 3 automatic qualifiers in the last 3 places. I think Sarah should be really proud of this. I think, again, the quality of the song, it's good, it's fine, it's a strong song. It's just not memorable. It's just not exciting. It's just not as outstanding as some of the other entries this year. In 22nd spot is Lion Seeker from Lithuania with Solo Quiero Mas. I loved this, but I had a feeling it wouldn't do so well. The only reason for that is just this song was such a grower for me. The first time I saw it, it didn't resonate with me, but I kept listening to it and hearing it again and again, and I found more interesting layers. In fact, I had to watch the semifinal performance a couple of times before I started to really appreciate some of the ways they were using lighting, the ways he was using these mechanical motions, this storyline of the light being his soul that, you know, splits out, fuses into him, and then finally elevates him in this performance. It was a real art house piece, and I appreciated it because we didn't have a lot of things in this lane this year. The competition is much better for having this entry in it. I thought they did a fantastic job. I don't think there's any shame in placing 22nd. I don't think there's any shame in placing anything anywhere here. You can talk about things wanting to be better, higher or lower, but ultimately that's down to the people who vote on the jury and the people who vote in the televote. They get to make the decisions, and what works for me may not work for them, so fair play. In 21st position, we have Belgium, Esila with Dancing on the Ice. Now, I'm a little bit proud of this one because I did call that I thought Belgium would qualify. I thought the song was just interesting and exciting in a way that, say, like Fire by Sarah Engels wasn't as strong for me. It has a real good bass. She has some really interesting vocal lines, and it kind of moves in a very pop but sort of avant-garde space in a lot of ways. I know this really didn't work for other people. I thought the staging was incredibly clever. I loved the dances all in white that allowed the different colors of light to reflect off them. I think, yeah, it was predicted to not do anywhere near as well as it did, so I think everyone involved should be very happy with that. In 20th place, it's Felicia with My System. The lowest score Sweden has got in a while. This was a song that really blew my socks off when I first saw it and the staging at Melodifestivalen. There was nothing like it. It was exciting. It was a little dark. It was a little threatening. But I think in that, it being such a risk, it didn't pay off. in the way that I think they would have hoped. It's not a bad result by any stretch of the imagination. There are fantastic songs that didn't even make the grand final. I think one thing that's interesting to talk about is the fact that Felicia has talked about, for privacy and mental health reasons, she wears the mask that covers her face and then she swaps the mask for the classes. We're never actually getting to see her and connect with her. That's totally well within her right to present herself however she would like to present herself on stage, but I do think that is sort of increasing the degree of difficulty in having to connect with people while half your face is covered. I think that may also be one of the reasons why Lion Seeker didn't perhaps do quite as well. I do wonder, if he didn't have the silver paint, would that maybe have been easier for him to connect with an audience? We'll never know, right? It's always easy to go afterwards, I wonder what if. But in the moment, it's a risk, and taking risks is good. So yes, Sweden, fantastic song, super memorable entry. I hope they keep taking risks. All right, in 19th place, it's Cyprus and Antigone with Jala. I love the music video. I thought it was so cool, the way it married sort of old world Cyprus with new pop. It is very much in that summery pop vibe of songs that Cyprus loves to send. There were far stronger live vocalists, I think is the nice way to put that. Which, again, you know what? She came out, she did a great song. I think the song was strong enough that it definitely got it over the line and into the grand final. And her grand final performance was a lot stronger than the semi-final performance. Still, the giant stone table is a little cold. Where I remember the music video being so warm and so friendly and so wrapped in sort of the diversity of Cypriot culture. The presentation on the grand final stage was sort of like a big slab of a table, the big marble arches behind her and the columns. And so I can kind of see why some of the shine came off this one when we got to the actual staging. It's a great song, it's a bop, it's making the Eurovision playlist, I'll tell you that much. In 18th place, we had Malta, Aiden singing Bella. There were rumors of a really fantastic prop. I expected something a little more daring, I think, perhaps. These were transparent, like TV screens that outlines and things were projected onto. I understand it was a technical marvel. I understand that there was a lot of engineering and problem solving and, you know, just teamwork involved in staging this song in such a striking and unique way. Putting animations on a transparent TV screen versus putting them on the LED wall behind you doesn't read so differently through the broadcast as I think Malta maybe might have hoped. But that's not to say this did badly. It's still a good song. It was still performed exceptionally well. I just think the things that were going to be the wow factor about the staging were just kind of, oh, that's interesting, and then we moved right along. This was a great entry for Malta, a great year for Malta. I think they should be proud. In 17th place, it's Serbia with Krajmane. Now, this was a fantastic standout. I think if you like heavy metal, this was the entry for you. And I think its place in the grand final and its position where it did so well means that there were people that really value the amount of effort and artistry that went into this entry. There's been some controversies in previous Eurovisions where people who sing in these genres that don't do particularly well at Eurovision, it's not that they feel undervalued, it's that you can kind of tell that it's just not what most people watching Eurovision or most of the jury are looking for, and as such tends to rank lower. I think that's changing. I think this is a far better position in 2026 than this would have gotten even back in 2019 or earlier. But still, what a great performance. I love the staging, I love the drama of it, the theater of it all, the costumes, the expressions, the acting, the fire. This was a great time. And again, it's not a song that I'm gonna go back and listen to. It's just not my cup of tea, but it was an incredibly memorable Eurovision performance on the Eurovision stage. In 16th place, we've got Czechia with Daniel Zizka singing Crossroads. Now, a very important thing, if you saw this performance in the grand final, there was a camera issue. If you didn't watch the semifinals, then maybe you might have missed that. But yeah, there was an issue with the camera at some point. The audio wasn't corrupted or concerned in that technical error at all, so you still heard the song. And I love this song. This song is really my cup of tea. I've seen people dismissing it as kind of all metaphor, no like substance, and I feel like that's not my interpretation of this song at all. I love songs that play in these sort of grand spaces, and I thought the execution of the mirrors was so clever, was so well done. I did catch a lot of cameramen in the corners of the mirrors in this performance, but that's not important. What was important here was how fantastic Daniel was. The moments that sent a tingle up my spine, where I got, goosebumps and all my hair stood on end, his final notes at the end when that performance sort of lets out into the stage, out of this hall of mirrors we've been in for the first 2/3, and then becomes just him taking all of that energy he's collected and powering it out into the universe, powering it out into the world. Oh, it was so good. It was a real highlight. Even though it's, not at the top of the leaderboard, this has won a place in my heart. And for that, I say thanks, Czechia, and thank you, Daniel, and thank you everyone who was involved in getting this up there on that stage. In 15th place, we have Croatia, Lelek performing Andromeda. This was fantastic. I think the staging here really heightened the whole package. I remember watching the national final performance and not being particularly wowed by the staging, even though there were some great ideas in there. I thought the way they moved from tableau to tableau was really interesting. Them utilizing that old street performer trick of, standing there floating in the air on the huge pole was really visually arresting. I don't think I've seen that in Eurovision before. It's probably been in a past entry that I'm just not aware of. It was such a fusion of Croatian culture and history and storytelling with a fantastic, epic, sweeping, harmonic choral sound. I thought that was really exciting and really interesting. I think this, again, is an entry where you kind of had to do your research to understand what the story was and what was going on, but the themes of the song did come across, that community, that women supporting each other, that kind of crying out for something greater and more important than yourself. I think they should be very proud. I'm gonna keep saying that about a lot of these. They should be proud. You clip them out if you want to, but my God, just beautiful, stunning. In 14th place, we had Norway, Jonas Love with Ya Ya Ya. Now the story behind this, if you again weren't aware of everything that was going on behind the scenes like I was following fiendishly along with at home, Jonas was very, very sick this Eurovision week. He was arguably even worse here in the grand final than he was in his semi-final, but I think the energy and the rock style of the song actually allowed him to do a lot of covering for his vocal weaknesses there. He is a powerhouse. Go back and watch the national final performance from Norway if you really want to see just how strong, confident, and belting he is with his voice. It was stunning. It blew all the competition out of the water in the national final, and here it just languished a little bit because you could tell he was really struggling through vocal issues that week. It sucks, right? They can't reschedule Eurovision if one competitor gets sick. Otherwise, they'll always be postponing it for one reason or another. Jonas got the short straw here. Unfortunate, but I still think he did fantastically. In 13th place, we've got Alice with Nan. I think this is an entry that did a really good job of exactly telling you what everything was about. Obviously, we had the English subtitles, so everyone at home could follow along and understand the message of this song. And I think that is absolutely one of the reasons why it placed as strongly as it did here in 13th. It's weird to say that 13th is strong, but you gotta remember, this was out of 35 songs at the start, and truly, gorgeous. That moment at the end where the actress sort of takes his glasses off and we get to see him, how vulnerable he is. Thematically, it resonated with me. I bought in. I thought his voice was so wonderful. I think his perspective and the songwriting was so lyrical and well understood. I'm just a fan. I think this did very, very well. It would have been nice to see maybe some more bells and whistles. Not even bells and whistles, that makes it sound like additional shiny frilly things on the performance. I think there maybe could have been some extra staging elements put in the first 2/3 of this performance to really help set up the emotional punch that came right at the end, which I loved. I thought that worked fantastically. There was not much juice left to squeeze out of this song and out of this entry, so I think Albania should be incredibly proud of what they've sent here. This and Germ are two of my most recent favorite songs. Albania, I'm really excited to see what they send next year. In 12th spot, it's Alicia with Pray. Kind of discussed it already, but that ramp was really clever. The visual stunningness of it all was phenomenal. Her voice is just world class. It's a song that moves through a bunch of different modes. I thought the dances were really sharp and on point. This reads to me as an entry where each individual element is incredibly strong and incredibly spectacular, but it doesn't all quite come together into one package that really becomes more than the sum of its parts. It is exactly the sum of its parts, and its parts are spectacular, and thus it is spectacular. And it came, 12th out of 35. That's pretty good. In 11th place, we have Monroe with Regard. This was another powerhouse performance. Monroe is someone who really benefited from just how exposed those vocals were. Like Alicia, they're just perfect, like a perfect vocal performance. And because it was so clean and so pristine and so dynamic with the range, I absolutely see why this did as well as it did. Monroe is super young as well. She's 17, giving this performance on the Eurovision stage. They actually mentioned it in one of the interviews during the grand final. I think that's spectacular. I think that's really special. I hope that it was a great experience for Monroe behind the scenes as well as on stage. I hope she takes a lot away from it, and I hope that her future career is just as interesting and entertaining as Regard was on the main stage this year. All right, folks, we're now at the top 10. Let's start at number 10, and it's Achilles with Ferto. I listened to this song on repeat when it first came out. I love it so much. The concept is so fun. The production is so light and entertaining. The staging, I thought, had just so many interesting ideas. I think if I could go back in time and tell them anything, it would be take a few things out. I'm not sure the big whirlwind of things that he steps into or him riding his scooter down the runway there really added much to the performance. The fact that you could hear those pyrotechnics going off during the performance as well was indicative to me that there was not like a filter on the vocal that was being heard to remove those sounds, so hence like a more exposed vocal. I think he did great though. He looked incredible. There were a lot of interesting ideas there, but the use of AI was also a drawback here. It's a really tricky song to stage, right? It has so many different segments, and to do something different for all of them, to switch back and forth, this was a real creative challenge, and on the whole, I think they did really well. I think if they'd maybe pared it back just slightly and maybe also decided to not use AI in the backgrounds, then I think this might have done even better than it did. But I think top 10 is great for Achilles. The smile that was on my face throughout this performance, this was a great time. I put it high up in my rankings. In 9th place, we have Ukraine and Leleka with Aridnim. And this was an incredibly special entry. I think that long note was so perfect, so interesting to see someone so centered and so controlled in the middle of this stage that is doing like 1,001 wacky things throughout the night. All the lights that could flash, all of the everything that could go on, and then to have the staging just move in these very simple elements, to have one instrument on stage with a bandura, to see Leleka just be here, to be right in the center of herself, and to be drawing up and out this note. It was really transcendent, and I think the sentiment of the song is something I love. I love the way this sounds. Again, it was a grower for me, and I think that's maybe what stopped it from being even higher. It's a song you maybe have to listen to a couple of times to really understand the rhythms and the changes, to understand even the lyrics and what's going on there and how everything ties together into this, again, really special package, but something that's not super accessible the moment you see it. Ridnim, just wonderful. In 8th place, it's Satoshi with Viva Moldova. To say Greece put a smile on my face, this is the entry that made me want to jump up and down and dance all around the room. Everyone that I showed this entry to was like, this is a great time. And it only gets better the more you understand. Like the more you realize that Moldova is going through the ascension process to the EU, that Moldova itself as a country came out of the breakup of the Soviet Union. That's not exactly technically historically true, but just that these are young people who see their future as part of a greater community than just themselves. In this moment on Earth, when we have, you know, so many people touting individualism, touting personal gain at the expense of the environment and everyone else around them. Like, I love this. That is to say nothing of the fantastic styling, the way it's sort of this quarterback, skater, punk aesthetic with these chainmail elements, the way the women are in the fantastic red dresses. Aliona Moon getting a moment that I had to explain to people. This is a callback to her song that she did in 2013, Omie. It's knowledgeable, it's aware, it's referential, and it's just such a good party. And those animations on the back of the LED screen, they were my favorite of the whole thing. I loved Little Satoshi. I want a plushie of him. If I could, I would have that music video, just in the background, playing on the background of my TV whenever, you know, I have guests around for a party. I had a blast. It made me so happy. Moldova made me incredibly happy this year. In 7th place, it's Denmark and Soren Topegård Lund with Forvegar Hjem. Great song, came second in the jury, equal second with Australia. And I just think it opened the show. It was first up. That is a really difficult place to score a lot of points from, but this was a fantastically memorable song and performance. Reminds me a lot of Taya and Selena, who opened Eurovision 2023 with a similarly absolutely phenomenal song. But just because it's in first place, it doesn't get the points that it would have got had it been later in the running order. It was so interesting. Looking at the odds favorites going into Eurovision, almost all of them pulled first half, with the second half for Producer's Choice only going to Finland and Bulgaria. Soren was fantastic. His vocal was really strong. I loved the way that it was presented here as slightly elevated from the national final. Denmark did a bang-up job this year. It was exciting, it was interesting. It's just hard to remember after you've seen 25 songs which one performed first. Finland in 6th place, Linda and Petter with Liikenheiten. I always mispronounce that, and I'm sorry. Blanket apology for mispronunciations in all of today's videos and all future videos. I'm sorry. I'm just a poor Canadian and Australian doing my best over here. This was the odds favorite to win going in. You can definitely see why. Everything about it is so dramatic. It's so like engineered for the Eurovision stage. The way it heightens in certain moments, the way you get the storyline that ramps up through the entire performance. It is very accessible to understand what is going on. It sounds interesting. There's a great instrumental hook as well as a vocal hook for it all. If there's a reason I think it didn't do better, it's maybe also the reason that Australia didn't do better, we'll talk about soon, but it is very Eurovision with a capital E. And I think in the last couple of years, juries and the public have really rewarded songs that are new and innovative. Even as I say that, I think this was new and innovative. Seeing Linda perform was really brilliant. The staging worked just as well here as it did in the national final. It was an all-over fantastic package. Some people might see 6th as a bit of a disappointment because they were the odds favorites to win, but I think seeing the show, seeing them perform in it, it was a really strong entry in a year that I think was full of really strong entries. Let's talk about another strong entry next, and that is Italy in 5th. Sal Da Vinci with Per Sempre Sì. This was a sort of very elevated but also really fun performance. When we talk about, you know, the story of the song, the story of the staging, the story of this Eurovision package, Italy had one of the strongest this year. It's a guy getting ready for his wedding, seeing his bride, they kiss, it's wonderful, it's a celebration, and then immediately we're into the dancing. The dancing was so acrobatic, was so like enjoyable. Seeing them flip and tumble and get dressed. I think this is one of the only times in Eurovision history we've seen performers put on pants throughout the performance. Usually they're taking things off. It was a great time. It was really accessible as a story. The song was really accessible as well. This kind of lighter disco sound. Sal is a performer of a mold that I think audiences, especially audiences that vote in Eurovision, are really familiar with. This was an easy thing to grab onto. It was really high quality. I can see why Italy did so well this year and always does well at Eurovision. Coming in at 4th place, so close, so near and dear to my heart, was Australia. Delta Goodrem with Eclipse. I'm not gonna lie, I thought Delta had a chance. I put her #1 in my rankings. The way that all the hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood straight up when she gets to that key change, when she shoots into the air through her piano, the way all the fire is going off. This feels like an entry where Australia knew they had a really good shot and they threw absolutely everything at getting this performance across the line, and it really paid off. In a year of exposed vocals, you know, Sal Da Vinci had some moments where he was struggling to hit some notes. Delta was just moving through that performance like a professional. The way that she had trained all of her movements that seemed so natural, her connection with the camera, her connection with the stadium, the way the song unfolds throughout the narrative. You know, we had this very quiet, stoic moment at the start, and then she moves down the catwalk towards the piano where there's this break and it's very fun. Everything gets dark. Like, there's such a journey with this song. I think it was very exciting. I think it was very electrifying. And I think there's a reason why it's top 5. In third place, it's Romania, Alexandra Capitanescu with Choke Me. I think, like Australia, this is another performance where everything was pulling in the same direction, all the elements lined up in such a brilliant way. The song is incredibly musically interesting. The way her voice moves through all these different modes is incredibly tricky, and I'm glad that it got some love from the jury, maybe not as much as maybe I would have hoped, but still, that massive televote is a real payoff for the fact that it was an aesthetic and a performance that really resonated, that were accessible, and that told a story even though it's a rock song in a genre that doesn't often do very well at Eurovision. This is one for the history books. The setup, the dichotomy of good and evil being in the white and good being in the dark, and that having to clash together on the screen was so good. Just like with Lavina, the way the rest of the band was acting and performing really heightened and elevated it. Everyone on that stage was pulling in the same direction. It was another one that I'd seen in the semifinals, and when I was watching with people who were seeing everything new for the grand final, I was like, you have to watch this. You have to, this one's good. And that's the best way to feel about an Eurovision entry. I think Romania did phenomenally well here. They were second in the televote and thus third overall in the competition. Incredibly well done. In second place, we have Israel, Non Batan with Michelle. Israel's participation in the contest is controversial for many, many reasons, not all of which I have the time or the energy to get into right now. There are other people on YouTube and a whole bunch of articles that you can go and read that kind of summarize all of the different elements at play with Israel's participation. I will say, sort of politically, I don't understand why Russia was removed from the contest, but Israel hasn't been, given the actions of their government. But that's not a call for me to make. I sit here in a living room in Canada talking about this. Trust that whatever you're seeing me say now in this video, I have talked for probably a long time trying to find the right words that both express the nuance of Israel's participation in the contest, as well as politically, you know, the values that I think should be in the contest and whether they're being reflected by decisions the EBU are making or not. It's a real tangle of weeds. I want to stress that my reluctance to discuss Israel's participation in the contest has nothing to do with the Jewish people, nor does it have anything to do with the artists or the songs that they are bringing. Israel came second in this year's competition. It seems very likely that they will place again in the top 1 or 2 positions next year due to factors that are very much outside of almost everyone's control. We have now arrived at the part I have been so excited for so long. Our number 1 song, the winner of Eurovision 2026, is Dara with Bangaranga. If you go back and look at my second semi-final predictions video, you will see that I picked Bulgaria 10th out of my 10 options there. I had a moment of panic when they won, where I was like, oh dear Lord, I hope I put them in my predictions video, and I did, but I took them last, and there's a reason for that. If you're so interested, you should go back and watch the national final performance of this. Bulgaria had chosen Dara to represent them, and Dara at that national final performed 3 different songs that Bulgarians voted on to see which song they would send to Eurovision. Bangaranga was there. It has since had a revamp of the audio of that particular version, as well as a complete reset for the staging. And both those things were things that I was unaware of until I saw Bulgaria perform in the semi-final, and there is absolutely no way that it didn't hit me over the head like a brick. Bulgaria won the televote, and it won the jury vote. It won both sides of the Eurovision scoring. The last time that happened was in 2017, nearly a decade ago. This is an incredibly special and an incredibly spectacular winner. The choreography for this was so wonderful, so unlike anything else in the competition. The styling of everyone on stage, what they were wearing, how it was located as well. This is a big thing. That narrowest stage that extends up into infinity is incredibly noticeable. There's sort of no hiding in a world of LED because the screen just isn't wide enough. Bulgaria and Czechia both this year had sets within sets that encased you in a world. They took you away from the physical location of the Eurovision stage. And because of that, it took away all the distraction, it took away all of the audience, all of these other sort of elements of the performance, so you were just laser focused on Dara, her dancers, and what they were doing. I didn't peg Bangaranga as a winner. It's one of those moments where I was like, oh, Bulgaria's gonna take it. Really? Oh yeah, they have. Actually, this is a way better song than I even realized. And that might sound bandwagon-y, but I think I was just so attached to that national final performance, and this staging brought so much. Let's talk about it super in brief. Dara is always moving. Even when she is doing her verse lines, you know, I'm an angel, I'm a demon, I'm a psycho for no reason, she is always moving. There is always something happening. She has to go somewhere. She has to get somewhere. And because we're so focused in on this room with her, we are being taken along with it. The sort of vibe and the tone and the energy of the song as it dips up and down, all of the choreography, all of the movement, all of the expression, and all of the camera work is telling you it's important, telling you it's urgent, telling you that this is something you need to pay attention to because we are going somewhere and we are doing something with this performance. And that, I think, is so brilliant and so hard to achieve. The degree of difficulty in doing that, in taking an entire 3 minutes and saying you cannot miss a second of this, all of it is driving us somewhere, is phenomenal. I can literally talk about this for hours, so I'm gonna try not to. But even the opening shot where she stands up and she's upside down and then you see the legs in the air, the dancers flip, she flips, the camera movement moves. It's telling you this is not what you expected. And that's exciting. That's thrilling. And that energy stays up throughout the entire performance. And it's so important that it's established at the beginning. Come alive, surrender to the blinding lights, no one's gonna sleep tonight, welcome to the riot, and then it repeats again. It is two identical things back to back, but the staging makes the first one so twisted, so upside down, so inverted and pulling you into this world. And then that second one, Dara's eye contact with the camera, her makeup, her expression, how open and how readable her face is, pulls you right in. Bangaranga is also one of the very few songs this year that was really playing with tempo. Every time we get into whatever that horned instrument is, we dip right down in tempo and then slowly work our way back up. It's dynamic. Dara just looks every part the pop star. This is a phenomenal winner. And here's one last thing that I think really makes Bangaranga a step above everything else. Good pop is really hard to do right. I think the lyrics and the music of a really good pop song have to be open to interpretation. Even if they're really literal, I think you have to be able to see it from a lot of different angles. You would have to be able to bring a lot of yourself to it, and it has to be something that can be really reinterpreted on the stage. And I think the setting, this kind of waiting room that they put on stage, the way that she is dancing and bringing out different parts of all of these people around her, they seem a little bit possessed, but a bit under her spell, and yet they are all working together. I love the way each dancer gets their own little moments throughout the performance to really take a bit of the spotlight and shine. It felt like such a team effort, and the way at the end of the song that waiting room disappears and then we are on the full stage with this final bridge, and those lyrics, I'm a rebel, I'm a danger, I'm a mover for freedom. The staging opens up, the music opens up, the lighting becomes this fantastic purple. We see all of them together without the trappings of the background. It feels like it's about something, even though those lyrics are really open to interpretation. I mean, the next line is like, let me pull you in so deep, I'ma leave you weak. And that's a very pop line, but it's presented so powerfully, it's performed so convincingly, it's choreographed so delightfully and interestingly. There just hasn't been anything like Bangaranga for the longest time, and for it to come out of nowhere in the odds and to really wow people, to win the semi-final, to win the whole thing, what a great year. I'm so excited that it was another first-time country winning. I thought this might have been Australia's year, but if Australia didn't get it, I'm so happy Bulgaria did. Bulgaria or Romania, neither of those three countries had won before. All three are in the top 5. It's an exciting year. It's great for the contest. It's really good. It makes me so excited to see what's happening in 2027. I know politically the contest isn't in the greatest spot right now. I know many people who didn't watch the contest this year because of the politics involved in some of the EBU's decision making. As someone who decided to push through it and not only watch the contest and enjoy it and celebrate all of these fantastic artists that took part, but is genuinely looking forward to the future, I'm glad I had a seat at this table to watch this unfold. It was spectacular. It was absolutely phenomenal. Congratulations, Bulgaria. Eurovision 2027 in Sofia. I'm ready for it. Maybe I'll even buy a ticket. All right, before we go, I think you should know I did watch Eurovision 2026 at a Eurovision party. We handed out scorecards where everyone ranked the countries from, their 12 points down to their 1 point. I thought just for fun, I would tell you where I put my votes this year. Here's the deal, my personal opinion ain't worth diddly squat, but in case you're curious, here it is. My 12 points went to Australia. I wrote down that it gave me chills. It did. My 10 points went to Czechia. I wrote down that it gave me chills. It did. My 8 points went to Moldova, where I wrote notes on my sheet. I just drew a bunch of hearts. I really loved Moldova this year. 7 points I gave to Romania. I wrote down brilliant story in all caps. 6 points I gave to Alice with Nan. I really liked that song. It was emotional. It got me where I lived. I thought it was a real achievement. My 5 points I gave to Finland. What a brilliant performance. How exciting. How visually interesting as well. 4 points went to Greece. Again, I put a bunch of hearts and said really good use of the camera. 3 points I gave to Ukraine. And I just wrote best in words, even though I only gave it 3 points. My 2 points I gave to Denmark. I love that song, I love that staging, song was great. And my 1 point went to Sweden. Even though there was some shaky-ish vocals I wrote down, I still thought the package was fantastic. Which means I didn't put Bangaranga in my top 10. I think even when I was watching the show, I kind of underestimated it. Before I sign out of this video, there are a few things that I want to shout out. Number one is the incredible teams of makeup people that were working this year. Every one of those performers looked so fantastic, but a shout out to particularly Delta's team, Alexandra's team, and Dara's team. The way that those 3 women, all in the top 5, the way their makeup is done to make their eyes so wide, so expressive, so emotionally engaging and acting, that's all the women's performance, absolutely, but the way the makeup really highlights and makes that sing is something that I'm not sure many people will really appreciate. Makeup can be one of those elements that's just taken for granted in a performance, and I think it's worth pointing out that those 3 teams did such a fun job, such a fantastic job. That was my review of the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest. Thanks for sticking through this. It was a bit of a monster. By not making a lot of smaller content all throughout the last couple of weeks, I've really tied myself up in a knot. I heard a rumor that Canada had sent a team over to Eurovision to observe and have discussions about their future participation in the contest. Could Canada become an interval act? Could Canada potentially debut at Eurovision with an invitation from the EBU? Everything's up in the air. I'm a little bit excited. I really hope it happens. I guess only time will tell. Until then, keep following ESC Canuck if you are looking for the Canadian/Australian sometimes perspective on Eurovision. My next few videos that I have planned are going to be all about introducing new people to Eurovision, so if you have any thoughts on the best way to get people involved, I would love to hear them in the comments. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time on planet Earth listening to me talk about Eurovision. It's made me very happy. I hope you got something out of this video as well. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.